Ollie here from Pirate Studios Quebec. I'm about to fly to Brazil to set up a brand new recording studio there. I'll guide you guys through the whole process, how we can start with an empty room and build something decent on a budget. So here I am in Brazil now. Remember when I said I would start from scratch? Well, I lied. I brought some of the stuff to basically do a quick kickstart for the studio. So I brought some of my equipment here. Thunderbolt interface screen, my monitors, camper, a second monitor here, and a few things like a microphone, basic stuff. Also for the computer, I bought a Mac Mini, the new Mac Mini M1 2020. So we'll see how this setup works. We still have to do acoustic treatment here, and we'll do a little paint job to make it more cozy and to try to simulate Pirate Studios Quebec or extend the facilities to Brazil, all right? So what we need to build the acoustic panel is not too complicated. We're going to need the wood itself. So in this case, here it's in centimeters, not inches, but it's going to be 2 centimeters thick by, let's go back to inches, 6 inches wide, and they sell them by 3 meters long. One plank gives us basically the two sides, left and right, plus the base. So we're going to need 22 acoustic panels. So we're going to need about 30 planks just for the frame. And to be able to cut that, we're going to need something like a microscope. We're going to be able to cut angles. You can change angles with this. Right now it's locked. So you have your adjustment here. It looks at 0 exactly. And you can also tilt like that for angles with the screws and fabric, and as well probably some staples for the fabric to hold on top of the acoustic panel. So with that, you should be able to go there. Alright, so we're gonna go check the wood for the acoustic panels. The acoustic panels are gonna be 4. Now they're gonna be 2 by 4, okay? And the thickness is gonna be 6 inches. Since that room is pretty big, and it's all with concrete blocks, there's a lot of reverb basically, and the low end buildup is insane. So we're gonna make them 6 inches thick to absorb the maximum low end we can. So we're gonna try to find the planks that are, let's say, the least amount of work needed to make the panels. All right. So let's go check the wood here. To reiterate, we're gonna do panels that are gonna be 2 feet by 4, and they're gonna be 6 inches thick. Okay, so these planks are 3 meters long. Here it's all in meters, centimeters. Come closer. So here we're gonna try to find the plank that makes basically the least amount of work to cut. All right. So these are 3 meters long, and there's 15 centimeters wide. So here you go. 15 by 3 meters, which is in inches, 118 inches, all right? So one plank like that will give us left, right, and top. So we're gonna need, for 22 panels like that, we're gonna need 30 planks. So let's get started. So we just received the wood. It's a bit funky. We're gonna have to sand the stuff and to make sure it's nice and flat. And after that, we'll be installing the rock wool inside the compartments, then putting the fabric over them. All right, so we have finally the rock wool. So there's like, I don't know, 8-9 packages, and there's 3 more to come. So these are gonna go inside acoustic panels. Since the room is basically very reflective, I think it's tiles or concrete, we're gonna put 6-inch thick acoustic panels, 2 by 4 feet. So it's gonna be basically very dense, and it should absorb a lot. So let's see how it's gonna work. So we got some paint as well for the walls. Try to simulate Pirate Studios Quebec, but in Brazil. So you pick one as a structure to help a little bit, and 2 screws per side. And as you can see right over there, it's like what, 17 done? Something like that. So the wood is not the highest quality, and you really don't care since it's going to be covered with special fabric for acoustic panels, so it doesn't let the particles out from the compartment with rock wool. So you pre-drill a hole, 4mm, and one more screw. About 1 inch from the side. Alright, so here's the first prototype for the panels. I did a bunch of mistakes at first, cut too short, cut too long, and now according to the materials I'm gonna get, it should be fine. So here it's not in imperial, it's in metric, so I also have to adapt. So this is supposed to be the rock wool is supposed to be 60 by 120, which ultimately determines the height of the panel, the height and the interior one, right? So I had to adjust, and I also put corners like that to support the frame, otherwise it would bend. The next part after that, obviously, it's to fill it with rock wool, cover it with fabric, and I have to make legs with that. So this is a different type of width to make the base, because these panels won't be on the floor. They're going to be about that height, right? So about 2 feet from the floor, and going a little bit higher also, because the speakers are going to be basically centered. So it's going to cover, let's say, the best, the ideal space, the ideal spot for where the reflections of the sound come from. So that's it. So I still have a bunch to cut, but at least now I have my template with the materials, have the materials at hand, and with some tools that are not working perfectly, but we make it happen. This is already about to overheat or basically give up. But that's it. So you can make it happen no matter where you are. Pretty rough. We had to sand everything down to basically bare bones and try to keep it nice and bright. So we started with the 40 grain sanding paper, and then we use 150. We did a nice polish at the end. So we started off with something pretty rough. All right, I'm using this N95 particle mask because these are not very good to breathe. Okay. So these packages are supposed to be 1.2 meters per 0.6 meter, and they're supposed to fit perfectly with the frame I made. So let's see how this works out. 3 layers thick. Oh. Yes, exactly. Excellent. So 3 layers like that. It's gonna be 6 inches thick of acoustic pre-blend, and then we cover this with a fabric that lets the sound come through, but not the actual particles. So it keeps the stuff in there, and it's nice and safe for health, basically. That's how it's gonna look like. So 1, 2, 3, and these are support corners in the center, so the structure doesn't move too much. And they're gonna be elevated with the little base I made here. It's gonna be something like this. So you can see how the final result. You may need to do a second layer of varnish after that. We'll see how it looks like. So this is going to probably require 2 layers to try to make it. You see here, it's not really uniform. So it's quite tricky, this stuff. And it's very sticky. Doing this shit, usually you need paint thinner, but you don't have to. I have to make it work. Let's spin it, see how it looks like. The top, we just need to do interior underneath, and then after that second layer, I guess. But it's gonna give a nice color. It's gonna need multiple layers. That's the tricky part.
Alright, so we were assembling the panels yesterday. Today I'm basically putting the fabric on top as well as the rock wool inside the panel. So there's 6 inches of rock wool inside the panels, and we use a specific fabric that doesn't let the particles out. It's probably propylene, I guess. So it looks like this. And here you go, final product after one panel done. So 6 inches thick. It's 1.2 meters high by 0.6 meters wide. And here's the stitching. So you basically just cover the casing with fabric and use staples, the T50 staples, like this, and you're basically good to go. So that's as easy as it gets. Here we go. Still have some paint around, but basically all the panels are done, all around the corners. We have this big one in the back here. Here we go. And we're gonna hang a cloud right there and get rid of this light. I'm sure you can tell I'm in Brazil. I'm at the final stage of assembling the bases for the panels right now. Should be 1 or 2 more days and then I'm off to work. So this is how it looks like. The bases here, basic square bases with the varnish. And then once it's done, it's gonna be standing up. Let's see how it looks like upstairs. So I'm wearing this very sexy plaid shirt right now. It's not to look good, but rather to protect from the really intense sun. So all the panels are here, and we have this massive one here, which is gonna be right behind the speakers to absorb as much low end as we can. I'm setting up the bass traps in the corners here. I'm gonna double stack this panel here as well. And this is a regular bass for holding the panel a little bit above. Let's say it's about 2 feet high, and it's gonna be basically standing between 2 and 6 feet high. So it's gonna be right around the center of the speaker height, basically. And this massive one here is also gonna stand, but it's gonna be in the back. So this is the base. I made a super heavy and sturdy base for this one because it's weighing about maybe 40 kilos, something like that. So here we are, finally done with the panels. It took about 2 weeks and a half, maybe 3. I had to find materials. It was pretty tough. In Brazil, the system is very different than in Canada. So we had to find the materials here and there. I had to adapt. The tools also are very different here. But finally, we made it happen. And it looks basically like a professional setup. So you can see here how the panels are made. It's basically just a base with a 2x4. 2 feet by 4 feet and 6-inch thick panel. The reason why they're thick like that is because the bass frequencies in this room were too crazy. So the thicker you are, the more you're gonna absorb also low frequencies in the spectrum. We have in each corner of the room is not necessarily an orthodox room, but let's say in each corner of the room you have bass traps that go basically from floor to ceiling almost, and they're absorbing all the bass. So in the 4 corners, this is what we started with. And then we have about 11 panels, especially on the sides of the mixing position in the wall here, because behind this wall there's a patio door, and the back wall where the sound is gonna also bounce. So that's basically the whole setup here. The only thing would be missing is a cloud, which is something hanging above the mixing position, but the ceiling here doesn't allow that for now. So we'll stick with this for now. For the costs, I would say total, it would have cost probably something like $5,000 to get it made, but by making it myself, it went up to maybe $1,000. So it's a good deal if you have a little bit of free time. So you can actually see a huge difference in terms of reverb inside the room, which before was totally crazy. So now we need to run tests. We have a calibration microphone, which is also not that expensive. So we're gonna run some tests and see how it works, and perhaps change the configuration of the panels without having to add extra stuff like other panels, clouds, bass traps. So with this type of calibration, you can actually optimize the positioning and avoid buying more stuff. So that's the final step after everything's done. So we have also some little details here, some LED lightings, which we're gonna probably hang around around panels or around the desk to give a bit of accents. Let's turn off the light to see how it looks like without anything. So it gives some kind of like a nice detail. You can do this around panels and you try to hide them. So you either stick them underneath the surface or you can screw with some plastic tabs here we have. So that's the end of the story for the acoustic treatment, the studio, Pirate Studios Quebec. So here we are in Pirate Studios, Brazil. It took about 3 weeks to complete everything. So the toughest part was definitely to find all the materials needed to build the acoustic panels and to actually assemble this whole thing. So I chose to do standing baffles so that way I can calibrate the room, the acoustics, and basically find the best spot for each panel. So we have bass traps in all the corners going from basically floor to ceiling, and then we have massive panels all around the room, 4x6 on each wall, so that way we're really absorbing a lot of reflections because these are I think concrete walls, so they reflect a lot more than regular, for example, wood or drywall even. So all the treatment is done now, everything is plugged and we're ready to rock, mix, record and produce. If there's any part of the process that you would like more information about, just ask in the comments below. See you next time.